Hello, this is Vision Denial in the road to MSI 2022. My name is Sam, and this series here is where I watch every playoff series from every region qualifying for the MSI 2022. And honestly, yes, even that particular one. So, what's this? I've already watched them all. Well, this is the Meet the Teams, and today we meet the 10th qualifying team straight from North America in the LCS, asterisk 10th because they technically were the 11th, but the shenanigans from the Vietnamese region. They are the 10th qualifying team from the LCS, and Evil Geniuses being the surprise addition to it, also being the 4th seed from the LCS to qualify all the way to the top, playing from the lower bracket in the maximum number of series as you can. They surprised many with their gradual improvement and, frankly, very surprising, well-adjusted nature for each individual team as they went on from the lower bracket. So without further ado, let's meet this team. Starting with the coaching staff, we got two interesting coaches. Straight from the Africa Freaks coming into the 2022 season, Rigby has made an interesting addition to the coaching staff for Evil Geniuses, and alongside with him, Turtles, who from the CB Law, specifically from, straight from the CB Law, from Vivo Kid, and various other esports clubs, joined Evil Geniuses in 2021 and has stayed a part of the coaching staff for this entirety of the 2 years. These two particular coaches have done quite a job at being able to adjust from series to series and help Evil Geniuses develop an identity around their quite careful team fighting and flexible nature around what kind of team fighting they do. They've done a lot of stuff that forced people to start, and I may note the 16% Jinx ban, a lot of bans towards the bottom side and anything that would revolve around re-engage and zone tools for neutral objective fights, while as they really try to avoid any particular early game shenanigans. A lot of bans towards Caitlyn's, Karma's, and Ari's, who would usually provide a lot of assistance towards pushing in turrets as much as possible in the early game, really favoring trying to shore up anything they can and get early neutral objective leads. So what does this look like? Well, honestly, it's mostly successful in this particular case. They get a very aggressive and very efficient win rate in terms of being ahead with gold at 50 minutes, and that's even being ahead at gold with very little marginal difference. I do want to point out, though, that much of these stats may be a bit skewed as they have a 50-50 rate in terms of their number of games played from their spring split to the spring playoffs, and they are much more successful in the spring playoffs than they were in the spring split proper. And you can see this reflected as much of their wins, straight up, 14 of their wins were from the playoffs. Now, that's not to say that this doesn't mean anything. I do still put a heavy emphasis towards the playoffs more than anything else, but we do have to take this into account when analyzing some of this data. So, what does this look like then? Well, they get a first turrets on a fairly infrequent basis. It is fairly even, traded back and forth, but much of their leads are not from the way they siege or the way that they put their lane assignments, but primarily from the way that they team fight. And they've been a fairly inflexible team overall. And though they've shown a lot more gradual improvement as the playoffs had gone on and shown a lot more adaptability and ability to play different compositions on the long-term scale, most of the spring split has been fairly inflexible for this team, who mostly excel in team fighting. And excel they do. So, let's meet these team fighters. Starting with the top lane Impact. Many of you international fans as well as North American fans are familiar with Impact. Going from uh, SKT all the way from 2012 to, or from 2013 until the end of 2014, straight up going up to North America since 2015 and finally joining Evil Geniuses in 2021. He has been the solid rock for this team. And honestly, holding one of the higher kill participations of most of the rest of the top laners along his caliber, he's also straight up the most consistently stabilized top laner, where many of the top laners who don't get a lot of leads ahead fall a little bit behind. He stays consistently ahead, while also having quite a roster to work with. Being very flexible with the kinds of champions that he can play with, he does not discriminate between the kinds of playstyles, but still excels primarily at team fighting. Give him what you need, he will play it. He is the mold of top lane. And honestly, without Impact's influence or without his ability to play this kind of style, or any style for that matter, Evil Geniuses would probably not be able to do a lot of the things they pulled off during playoffs. Moving on to the jungle, we have, for many European fans, a familiar face in Inspired, who went from going to Rogue in 2021 straight to Evil Geniuses in 2022 season. And he has done fantastically for himself, bolstering a fairly equivalent, flexible kind of champion roster for himself that Impact has. He has been equivalently a solid rock, being ahead by a camp every so frequently against his jungle opponents, while also getting in ganks either in the top side or the bot side, just to be able to enable his team. And frankly, Inspired has been very good at being efficient with his gold. Notice that he has a very small gold percentage for his team compared to a lot of the jungle counterparts, and that means that he honestly gives away a lot of the gold to his laners, despite the fact that honestly he could do a lot with it, and that's totally fine. Once he's gotten this ball rolling from the early game, he will continuously keep putting up pressure for the neutral objectives for his laners so that they can move ahead, and the mid to late game team fighting looks good and in their favor. Heading to the mid lane, I believe this is our first rookie amongst all of the teams, and I think the only rookie, as a matter of fact. I'll double check that later, but he's definitely one of the first rookies that we cover in this Meet the Team series. Jojopyun joining Evil Genius's main roster in the 2022 season, and quite honestly has been a fairly solid, consistent mid laner. Definitely not the strongest of the mid laners in North America at this current moment. He is, however, what I would consider very flexible and dynamic one. Needs to play behind, will do that. Needs to play low economy, will do that. Needs to carry early, also go ahead. And he's ready to change the kind of pressure that he wants, and specifically excels in the laning phase. He's been a laning phase first mid laner for as long as his entire regular season so far has shown. His career may be short, but I do think that he will do fairly well against other mid laners that he'll have to face off against. And being part of one of the more flexible lineups that they can get, despite Evil Genius's lack of flexibility in types of drafts, he, however, does find a way to take the types of champions he has and use them in a fluid manner to assist with side lanes, team fightings, or any type of zone control that is necessary in any moment the game requires it. Following up in the bot lane, we have Danny. Now, Danny made huge waves in the playoffs with especially his Team Liquid and 100 Thieves play. He's been, honestly, this is not his rookie year, but he played for very little in comparison during the entirety of the 2021 split, and played equally little for the 2022 split. Been with the team for a year, and with his strides coming into the playoffs, a lot of his focus has been on the Jinx and Zeri. And his roster may look similar to many of the other bot laners, but look at the frequency of the types of champions he plays. The second thing I'll also point out here, and this is the first time I'm putting this in a lot of the Meet the Team videos, but he has a significantly high first blood victim. His laning phase, even though his stats are very noticeably positive, you'll notice that they're not incredibly ahead comparatively speaking. A lot of his gold difference and XP difference comes from the fact that the rest of his team really pours in a lot of resources to get him ahead as much as possible. And so Danny really excels in the mid to late game fights because his team has enabled him to transfer there. And I think that's a testament to the way that Evil Geniuses play to make sure that their strong laners are able to translate a lot of their leads to Danny, who, comparatively speaking, even though the stats may not show it, is a relatively weak laner and may struggle against many of the bot laners that are coming into MSI. His inflexible nature may make it easy for people to ban against him, but that might be an asset Evil Geniuses play with. Lastly, we have Vulcan. Vulcan, a man after my French-Canadian heart. Philippe Laflamme, let's go. He has been in the North American scene since 2015, but finally getting his debut in the 2019 season. He's been with the region for so long and has made huge splashes during his tenure on Cloud9 and then finally joining Evil Geniuses in 2022. And equally with impact has been a solid rock for the two relatively newer players. Where much of his ability to create plays, he has a fairly good roster of supports that he's played along the years. A huge focus on that are on things with a lot of disengage, re-engage, and tank stats. 3 champions jump out on a regular basis: the Leona, Nautilus, and Tahm Kench, which, even though he's shown proficiency with many of the other champions, he primarily focuses on those 3, showing part of the nature of the inflexibility of this roster. But Vulcan, for him, he won't take that lying down and will use these to create lots of space for team fighting and to enable his team in any particular neutral objective based scenario. Vulcan may fly under the radar for most and unnoticed, but when you least expect it, he will find any particular engage opportunity and it will be followed up on quickly. So what do I think and expect from this team? Well, honestly, North America has had a really poor history in terms of international events, and that's understandable for a lot of different reasons. That said, it's not a surprise that many people would be very excited for this team. They had a very good and solid run during their playoff series and showed a lot more, practically almost the same number of games played during their playoffs than the regular season, to the point where it's much more convincing to look at their playoff run as a solid contender for what we should expect there. That said, part of the flexibility that they showed is a little bit too little too late in my nature, for my opinion. They had, honestly, an incredible sets of games, but most of their games that they're very solid on were with one type of composition, and granted, a very well executed type of composition, but just one type regardless. And that bodes not so great for me in terms of expecting them to do very well in the international scene at MSI. Evil Geniuses as an organization, being largely North American now, hasn't actually seen good international viewing since their European days. And hopefully maybe this will be a changing point where Evil Geniuses can show again that they can be an international team to contend with. But so far, the lack of flexibility usually leans me to thinking that no, they will probably not see this kind of success. But those are my thoughts. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments down below. If you like this type of content, leave a like and subscribe. And we only have one more team after this to go into the meet the team's MSI. So then I will see you then. Bye.